Welcome to episode 539 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Meyers, screenwriter and blogger at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I am interviewing writer Vincent Scarsella. I've gotten to know Vincent over the last few years as several of his scripts have placed highly in the SYS screenwriting contest. He's a retired lawyer who is a prolific writer in retirement. He's written novels, plays, and now screenplays. And we talk about all of these various formats, how he's written in them, and then ultimately how he's been able to have some success in each of these formats. And he now has a feature film, a script that he wrote, has now been produced, and is about to get distribution. So we talk through that as well and how all that came about for him. So stay tuned for that interview. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving me a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking or sharing it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. Any websites or links that I mentioned in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcast, and then just look for episode 539. So just a quick few words about what I'm working on. My rom-com is in the books. We finished production a couple weeks ago. We had a few hiccups, but everything basically went as planned. Now it's a long slog through post-production. But overall, it was a great experience. I ended up putting together a terrific cast and crew. Everybody was really fantastic. And I think, no matter how the film ultimately turns out, I think it was a great experience for everyone involved. At least I hope so. Any project like this involves a lot of people who are pitching in their time and effort, and in some cases money. So I really do appreciate everyone who worked on this film with me. We had a bunch of extras that came out, really, and that's doing extra work is not a lot of glory. A lot of people came out just to be supportive of indie film. Obviously the actors, I cast most of them through the breakdown service here in LA. All was terrific. There was nobody that I was sorry I'd cast. Everybody just really showed up and gave it their all. And from a producer and a directing standpoint, that's really all you can ask. Obviously, there's limitations with the budget and stuff, but as I said, it was a great experience, and I hope everybody involved really did get something out of it. In fact, a lot of the people involved in this film are actually people I met through this podcast. So, thank you to everyone who worked on this film and also listens to this podcast. I really, really do appreciate it. So I will have some updates as the film progresses through post-production. The first step, Bernie, who was my cinematographer and actually someone I met through this podcast, he shot the pinch and came back and he shot this one as well. He is also going to edit it. So he's now basically putting together what's called an assembly cut. So it's just going to be sort of a loose approximation. He's just going to quickly put the movie together. And then we can kind of sort of just feel like, what do we have here? And we can start to shape it and sort of figure out what is that next step. So hopefully we'll have that in a month or two, and then we can start going from there. As I said, I'm going to do, I'll do some updates as things go along. I'm going to do a Kickstarter, try to raise some money for post-production and marketing for the film. So stay tuned for those details. So now let's get into the main segment. Today, I'm interviewing writer Vincent Scarsella. Here is the interview. Welcome, Vincent, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show with me today.
Thanks for having me, to give me this opportunity. Thanks a lot.
Hey, thank you. So maybe to start out, you can just tell us a little bit about your background. It sounds like you were a lawyer for many years. You then started to write novels and plays and film scripts about this career as a lawyer. But maybe you can just start there. What was your initial career? How long did you practice law? And then how did that transition into writing?
All right. Well, I started practicing back in 1980. Believe it or not, it's been a while.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up in the Navy JAG Corps, the Judge Advocate General Corps, for about 4.5 years. Became a prosecutor for about 5 years with the Erie County District Attorney's Office, and then got a job, kind of a unique kind of job, prosecuting bad lawyers for something called the Attorney Grievance Committee up in Buffalo, New York. And I ended up being the deputy chief counsel up there from 1989 to 2008. And in those 18 years, probably saw and reviewed about 15,000 complaints against lawyers practicing in Western New York, which encompasses Niagara Falls, Buffalo, and the Southern Tier, and handled some notorious cases. And while I was after my time at the grievance committee was up, I practiced for about 2.5 years as a lawyer heading a criminal tax fraud unit for the New York State Tax Department. So I've always been sort of in government practice. And I retired in 2010 and moved down to Florida from Buffalo.
Hmm.
Although we go back the last couple of years, we go back up to Buffalo. I have three children and nine grandchildren and one on the way. And so I always thought when I was doing the grievance work, the disciplinary work, that it would make a great TV series because it's kind of different. It's internal affairs for lawyers,
Hmm.
and the lawyer shows do great on TV. And although I dread watching them because the law is always so wrong, and so I wrote a TV treatment. I did a screenplay, a pilot script, and thought, tried to pitch it. Of course, I'm a nobody, so it didn't go very far.
Hmm.
And I ended up shelving it. And after I retired, I've always been writing since I was a kid, a teenager, and wrote a lot of short stories. Some of them got published, in magazines and whatnot. Not famous magazines, but anthologies and things like that. And finally, after I retired, I said, well, it's time to start writing novels. And I really put my time to it, every day Saturday when you're retired. And so I had a
Hmm.
lot more time on my hands and put it to good use, I think. And since 2013, and I published 12 novels, and four of which are based upon or embellished from my experiences as a grievance lawyer up in Buffalo, and they're
Hmm.
called the Lawyers Gone Bad series. And that and after a while, and I also wrote some other standalone things. I like to write. I like to read and write crime fiction, legal thrillers, which the Lawyers Gone Bad series are. Another series called The Anonymous Man. I love Elmore Leonard and his style of writing, and some other guys like that in the crime area, mystery area. But I also loved when I was a teenager in the '60s. I had a love for science fiction.
Hmm.
And the science fiction in the '60s went through a dramatic change where it became speculative fiction, where character and social issues became more of the genre, dominated the genre. Guys like Harlan Ellison, Theodore Sturgeon, writers like that came about, and I love that. And I wrote, so I have a mixture. I write crime fiction and speculative fiction,
Hmm.
basically, and publish novels along those lines. Um,
So let's just break that down. I know I've got a lot of people that listen to this that are also trying to write novels or turn their screenplays into novels. Maybe you can just talk a little bit about that. Just what is your process for writing a novel? It sounds like it's been 12, 13 years. So you're averaging about one novel a year. Like, what does that break down? Is that like 3 hours a day, 5 days a week for 6 months, and then you churn out a novel? But just break down that actual
Yeah,
writing process a little bit for
it's
me.
changed, obviously. Back when I first started writing, I had like every young writer bouts of writer's block. And then I read a guy by the name of Stephen Pressfield who wrote something called The War of Art. It's a kind of the art of
Hmm.
war, the Sun Tzu. And his thing was just do it, just write. If it's not working, just keep doing it because the real writing process is in the revision. And that became sort of my mantra and something to live by. So after that, after I read him, I don't know, it was probably in the '80s sometime, I just write. I just, at one time I was just writing in journals and now it's like I do it on the computer.
Hmm.
So the process evolved, is what I'm saying. And right now it's I get up at early. I get up sometimes in the middle of the night at 2 in the morning and I write for a couple hours and go back to bed. A lot of times I'm up by 6 and I'm trying to get 3 to 4 hours of writing a day in at various points in the day. Of course, I'm fortunate that I'm retired
Hmm.
and my only job is to write at this point and to listen to my wife when she tells me to do things. But so I that's my process now.
Hmm.
I demand out of myself that I write for 3 to 4 hours, and whether it's good or bad, and a lot of times it's bad, but then you go back and revise it. And
Hmm.
I have two things that I try to do. I always want to have a really good beginning, and I always before I start a project or work on a project, I want to know where it's going to end. Now, it doesn't always end up that way, but it gives you sort of a map that
Mhm.
you can follow from the beginning to end, and everything else that fills in between to get from point A to point Z. And that's my process, basically.
Gotcha.
And I
And
try to
so,
work.
what do you do to market these books? How do you get them published? How do you get them out there? You send me your Amazon link. You've got all these books on Amazon. How do you go about that process?
Well, a few years ago, and it was after the first novel, it's probably about 2015. I was working through royalty publishers. I mean, I send stuff out to publishers, and you have to have an agent. Well, I don't have an agent, and then I'm still trying to get an agent now.
Hmm.
Any agents out there, I'm looking for help. But so I found a thing. I found through Amazon something called the Kindle Direct Publishing. And it's a great tool to help indie novelists like me
Hmm.
get their word out and things for sale. And it's an easy system to use. You go to Amazon, you join it. And I'm not a spokesman for Amazon. I have
Hmm.
some problems with the way they're profit taking on some of my stuff. But and lately I use to get the manuscript formatted correctly and to do the covers correctly. I use Fiverr.com, and I have a provider there, a gentleman from India who's very inexpensive to do a manuscript and a cover, and he does it correct so that Amazon's tricky in their formatting sometimes, and I get that on there with ease actually.
Hmm.
And it costs anywhere from 100 to $150 to get this guy to do a 350-page novel. And it's great. And I use it. In fact, he's doing something for me now because I'm redoing the Lawyer's Gone Bad novels. And I have another novel that's in the pipeline that I have to get to him. But we have a good relationship. I built a rapport with him. I send people to him,
Hmm.
and it's a great process. So Kindle Direct Publishing, KDP. You go to Amazon Self-Publishing, I think is the thing you could put on Google to get to them, and you can you can upload
Hmm.
nonfiction, whatever you want, you can do through them. A single story you could do through them, and they have guidelines for pricing and everything, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
pretty simple. So for an indie guy like me who doesn't have an agent, who I don't even try anymore with publishing houses, it's been great. And then the marketing end of it's a lot of sweat equity. You are going on social media, bothering your friends and family,
Hmm.
and developing an email list that you can use and send out your latest information, and so forth. So that's the process. It's time consuming. Fortunately, again, I have a lot of time
Yeah.
on my hands to do that, and it's fun for me. It's actually fun. I mean, I'm retired, and I'm not going to sit around the house. I'm not a pickleball player.
Hmm.
I like to golf, but I hate to golf. So it's like, what am I going to do? And I
Hmm.
love writing, and I love the process of trying. I love writing and I love entertaining, and they go together. I want people to read my stuff and like it. Like for example, I got an email today from somebody who wanted to get the second book in the Lawyers Gone Bad series called Personal Injuries, and they couldn't find it, and they somehow contacted me, and I sent them the book, and she wrote back and said it's a wonderful book, and and it's gratifying when
Yeah,
you hear
yeah.
that from your reading public, if you will,
Hmm.
my limited reading public.
So, at what point in this process did you start to think about turning some of this into plays or writing plays and turning some of this into screenplays?
Okay, back in 2010, I was living up in Buffalo. Back then, I had not retired yet, and I joined a playwriting uh, not contest, but it was a group, and I was called out of something called the Roll Less Travel Theater. Buffalo has a great community theater and theater background. They just have a lot of good little theaters going. And so I joined this group in the theater district of downtown Buffalo, and there was like 10 of us, and tried to write a play, and it was horrible. It was bad. And it didn't get rave reviews from the group, but I'm the type of guy that I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the process and the idea of not only having somebody read your short story or novel, but act it and see it on a stage
Hmm.
just thrilled me. And so I started reading plays and got the idea how to do it. And I read a couple of how-to books, although I'm not a big fan about how-to books, how to write books. I think you have to read the plays and to get better at it. And I rewrote the play I submitted, and that play ended up 5 years later becoming performed, or many years later, in fact, 9 years later, being performed at a theater in Lakeland, Florida,
Hmm.
and then performed at the event center of where I used to live down in Florida, a community I lived at called Island Walk, and 200 people were there, and
Hmm.
it was performed. So it was a
And how do
wonderful
you get
experience.
those? How do you get in contact with those theaters? Do they have like an open submission and you submit your
No,
play?
no,
You
no.
cold call them, you email them?
It's called networking. I mean,
Okay.
I got together with uh, a, a theater guy named John Fedpue from Lakeland, Florida. There was an article in the Lakeland Ledger newspaper, and I tracked him down, sent him an email, and he was running sort of a writers group weekly, and you could submit plays to this group, and they would critique them and get back to you. And eventually, after COVID, became a Zoom thing, and I started attending that, and I submitted. The play was called Practical Time Travel, and the group liked it, and we massaged it a little bit. They made some good suggestions, and I changed it. And then he took it on. He knew kind of a troupe of actors in the Lakeland, Florida area who performed it. And I was writing for Black Box Theater. Black Box Theater, small little theater. It's on Broadway. The sets
Hmm.
are minimal, and you have to keep the number of characters down as well, and because the stages are small and so forth. So it was performed in January of 2019 in Lakeland, a little theater called the Stage Room. And then we took it to my community. They have a big event center with a nice stage and so forth. So, and I pitched it to the activities coordinator, and they usually have comedians and bands, and this was something different that they were looking
Hmm.
for, some theater, and so we were able to perform it there.
Huh.
But prior to that, I had written a play called Hate Crime about a young rising black lawyer representing a white supremacist in a murder case. And there was a director in Buffalo by the name of Phil Davis Sr., who I just sent it to, was Facebook friends, and just, hey, you want to look at this play? Sure, send it to me. And usually you don't hear back, but he
Hmm.
he liked it, and so that was my first play performed in stage with about 200 people in a community theater
Hmm.
up in Buffalo in 2015. And that play has since gone on to be performed in colleges, a couple colleges,
Huh.
and also it was an entry. It was a finalist in the Tampa Bay Theater Festival in 2024, but it was just a stage reading at that
Hmm.
level. So
Gotcha.
I mean, and I've got several others. I do these kind of jukebox musicals from time to time.
Hmm.
Um, that I'll whisper I violate copyright law, but we won't tell anyone because I'm not making a lot of money doing it,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
uh, and do things like that.
So then what is the next transition? So then how did you move into screenplays? You had these novels, you just thought they would make great screenplays. Maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, what happened was as I said, when I was working at the grievance committee, I thought it would make good TV, and wrote the treatment, and then I went on and wrote a TV pilot based upon the first book. Nothing happened, so I shelved it. But then, as about early 2020, 21, the idea popped in my head again that this, I think I was watching Law and Order episode or something. I'm rolling my eyes, and I decided to dust it off and see where it could go. And I did, and it wasn't great. This is in November of 2022, and I was on Facebook, and I happened to be Facebook friends with a New York City actor by the name of Tom Polino, and he is he posted that he was going to be on an episode of FBI, and I watched the episode, and he had a sort of a minimal role, but he's a very good actor.
Hmm.
And so I contacted him on Facebook on my birthday, November 10th of 2022. I said, "Hey, I got this idea for a TV series. I went to take a look at the script." And I've been doing that and I'm not shy about doing that. And usually they don't respond or say,
Hmm.
"No, I'm not interested." But he actually said, "Yeah, send me the script." And so I sent it to him, and then we developed a relationship. He liked it. He liked the idea, the concept. And it took 2.5 years, but that TV series ended up becoming a feature film. We decided the TV series, after many jumps and starts, or starts and stops, wasn't really working. And TV, I don't know if you have this experience, but TV episodic is tough to write. I mean, especially taking a novel and making it into a full season, 6 to 8 episode, hour-long series
Hmm.
is difficult. And it was easy for me to take the novel and adapt it to a 90-minute screenplay, which is what I did
Hmm.
in February of 2024. After we've got, now we're into 2.5 years, um, and uh, um, and Tom liked it, and then he ended up hiring another screenwriter to kind of put a little more comedy in it, and it became what's now a feature film called One of the Good Ones. Uh, that is is gone through post production, and it's on the festival circuit. And he just signed I was going to sign a distribution contract with Indie Rights, um, and we're going to see it distributed and
Hmm.
offered on various streaming sites and for rent and so forth.
Perfect,
So
perfect.
yeah, that's the process I went
Yeah,
through.
yeah. And I hope people are sort of reading between the lines, just exactly what you said. You're not shy about reaching out to people. Could you give us just some basic idea of the scope? Because I get emails from people and they'll say stuff like, "Oh, I sent my script out to 10 people and no one responded. I don't know what to do." And it always just feels like a quantity issue. Like when you've sent your script out to 1,000 people or 10,000 people, then you can start to say maybe something's not working. But maybe you can just give us a sense of the scope. Like how many emails did you send before you get a response, a positive response?
Well, with Tom, I was pretty lucky. I mean, that was
Hmm.
just, I just, so I don't know. I don't count,
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I try to keep track of, like, I send to eight, like I've been sending a lot lately to agents, and you try to keep a little chart
Hmm.
that you can record when you sent it, did they
Sure,
respond, and what was
yeah.
the response. But for that type of email, probably 50, 60. I mean,
Hmm.
you're constantly doing it. I put aside at least an hour a day for things like that. And, my problem is I'm involved in not only the writing of prose, of novels and short stories and things, but I'm working on another film that I'm producing now called Local Talent. That's a Buffalo-centric movie. It's set in Buffalo. I have some support from some local luminaries up there, a restaurant owner by the name of Dennis DiPaolo and a former heavyweight boxing contender by the name of Baby Joe Messi. Um, and so we're trying to get that developed. We have it's an indie film with a micro budget of $75,000. I've partnered with some young Buffalo filmmakers who are very eager and very knowledgeable, very good, who are waiting to be discovered. They're like the local talent down
Hmm.
there or up there. And so that involves a lot of work contacting people, and the financing end of it, as you probably know,
Hmm.
is one of the hardest things to conquer when you're trying to get a screenplay filmed. And so I'm in the middle of that. And I'm doing that. I'm trying to also market my other writing and write some more screenplays,
Hmm.
so
Let's talk about your writing process a little bit. What does this look like for you as a writer? You said you try and get 3 or 4 hours a day. Do you go to a coffee shop? You have you think your home office? Do you do it in the morning? You do it at night? Maybe you can just talk through that
Yeah,
process and then outlining the script. How long do you spend outlining the script? If you're going from a novel, you already have sort of a story there. Just how does that go? You take it and then put it in outline, then turn it into screenplay. But maybe you can just sort of describe sort of your writing process.
yeah, and again, that process has evolved over time.
Sure. Yeah.
I write where I'm sitting now, and
Okay.
I have den, and we have a typical Florida house, a couple bedrooms, a den, gathering room, and so forth. And so I'm here. I spend most of my day here. I think my wife's happy about that, but anyways, I'm over here. But yeah, so I spend, like I said, I get up, sometimes in the middle of the night, an idea hits me, and I take my phone and I'll go to notes and jot it down, and then sometimes no, you gotta get up and go write it down, go get it going, and usually it's when I already have a story going or a novel
Mhm.
going, that I need to add this element to it, or this character needs to change or whatever, and I'll get up at 2 in the morning and sit at the computer for a couple hours. And so that's how it works for me. And then, then I wake up and I continue on with the novel. Right now, I'm going through a process where I'm revising all the Lawyer's Gone Bad books. I published four from 2015 to 2020, but because I thought my script made the first book better. The plot was better. The characters
Hmm.
got more deeper. That I went back and redid it and rewrote it. And then I looked back and I said, "Oh, some of this stuff is horrible. I wrote that. I'm ashamed." But so I've gotten a little better because it's just the practice makes
Hmm.
perfect. I think as you're writing, you're getting better. The more you write. So I mean, that's the process. I lately in the last year and a half I have gotten to use, and people are going to throw tomatoes at me or something, but Chat GPT, the artificial intelligence, which has made me much more productive because it's a great research. Half of writing is research,
Hmm.
and research will a lot of times generate characters that you didn't anticipate, generate plot lines that you didn't really think when
Hmm.
you first got the concept going, and it does help in a lot of ways. So I do utilize it. It helps with making covers. It can do so many things,
Hmm.
and so I've now evolved into incorporating Chat GPT. Not that I let it write my stuff.
Hmm.
I tried a couple times where I let it, and it gave me garbage. And
Hmm.
so, and it wasn't, it is not to my liking at all. So I don't think it helps in that end. But so I don't know if I'm answering your question because it's an evolutionary process
Hmm.
where I've changed the way I do things for the last, 40, 50 years I've been writing.
What
So.
what are some tips you can give us the differences between writing novels and writing screenplays and then turning those novels into screenplays, paring stuff down? Maybe just talk about that process a little bit. How do you go about that? Do you create an outline when you have a novel? Do you create an outline, then turn into a screenplay? You just start writing the screenplay? Just how does that go for you?
Well, as I said, I have to have a beginning, and to write something that people are going to want to read, you better have a good beginning,
Hmm.
something that's going to pull them in immediately. And I need to have an ending. And I'll roughly outline from beginning to end. Now, the outline never ends up being what the final product
Yeah.
looks like, but it's a good guide and it gets you into the process of writing. And then it changes. Things pop into your head that you didn't anticipate. So that's my essential process. I have to have a beginning and I have to have an end. That works for me, or else I can't do it. I can't get into it. Um, and in terms of the different formats, novel writing, prose writing, playwriting, and screenplay writing are three very different uh, formats. They're very
Hmm.
different things to write, I found. Because, prose, you're being more descriptive. You have to be to build a world to your world building, whether it's lawyers gone bad, the world of being a disciplinary counsel, playwriting. You're writing for an audience, looking at actors perform on a stage, and film. You have to be much more cinematic and brief in writing your screenplay descriptions. I've read various things about, the page should be almost all white when you write a screenplay. I don't know if
Hmm.
that's, something that you've also
Yeah,
thought
yeah.
about. But so yeah, and to be a good writer, you got to read a lot. And when I got into screenplay writing, especially back in 2022, before I met Tom, and we went on with the Lawyers Gone Bad project. Um, it was awful the things I was putting out, but and then I started reading some screenplays. I went back and read The Godfather. There's a great book, Annotated Godfather, which gives you the screenplay plus stories underlying the screenplay,
Hmm.
which is a great little tool. And I also read some other screenplays that were out there by people who are great screenwriters, and I sort of filtered in, that good writing, tends to filter in, and I've gotten better at it. Not that it's great, but I mean,
Hmm.
I've gotten better at it. And some of I enter a bunch of contests along the way, and to get some feedback. And it's been, frankly, I've gotten some very positive feedback.
Do you
So,
have
in fact, from your
Yeah, exactly.
yes.
No, you've done well in our contest, and that's always an interesting thing when some of the same people, their scripts always make it pretty far in the contest. That's a good sign you're on the right track. What is your rewriting process like? You mentioned you don't have an agent, but do you have a group of writers that you send your stuff to? You get notes from them. Just what is that rewriting and that note taking process like for you?
Well, I one of my errors, I guess you can say, is when I'm done writing and I won't talk about screenplays, but when I'm done writing a screenplay, I'll have my wife, my poor wife Roseanne, be play multiple roles in the screenplay, and because I have to hear it, you have to hear dialogue, and you have to just go through it, and she's very helpful, and she enjoys it, and she's a good critic too. She'll tell
Mhm.
me that's not, and she'll make suggestions. So sometimes I say, well, I'm going to have to give you a byline with me on this one. And she'll also tell me that she really likes it. And I tell her to be critical. I don't want you just to pat me on the back. That's not going to
Mhm.
help me. So I do that. I mean, I used to belong to this Just Right Lakeland group and submit things to them. Unfortunately, John Fedke is running a business now, and he's got four children, and he's busy, and
Yeah, yeah.
so he doesn't do it anymore. So I really don't have that opportunity, um, and so I kind of go it alone and hope that I'm doing it right.
Mhm.
And the only way I can find out whether I am or not is through the contest that you sponsor and
Mhm.
others, obviously out there. I'm Film Freeway
Yeah, yeah.
member and all that, so I enter
So you
contests.
mentioned you're not crazy about how to write books, Save the Cat, Sid Field's screenplay, and those are the books, at least for me, that really laid out sort of the screenplay structure. You know how to just how to sort of build a screenplay. So maybe you can tell us what your approach is. What is your approach to screenplay structure? The inciting incident, the act breaks, the midpoint, all of that stuff. Just how do you decipher that and figure that out with your scripts?
I just try to tell a story. I mean, I just don't get into the arc and all. I don't.
Hmm.
It bogs me down when I start thinking about that. So I'm trying to build a world that the viewer or reader can get into and believe it really exists, and then have a good plot. And again, I think it comes from writing or from reading uh, science fiction and crime, where plot was so important, but yet the really good writers knew how to create characters too, to be in those plots. And that's what I try to do. I try to tell a good story. And Whether you're writing a brief, a legal brief for a court, which I used to do at one
Hmm.
point in my life, you're there to tell a story. Or when you're doing a trial, and I was a trial lawyer, you have a jury. That's your readers. That's your people. You have to build a story to them so they can understand. And so that's my approach. And so I like there's a certain style that you have to use when you format a play or play or screenplay. And I wasn't very good at that. And in fact, some of your assessment people had mentioned that, too flowery in my, scene descriptions and so forth. So I've cut that down and learned from that and from reading other scripts as well. And so, the how-to books, yeah, some of them, I was reading a lot of them early on in my
Hmm.
writing career, if you want to call it that. But lately, I haven't. I just don't.
Hmm.
I write. I'd rather spend that time writing. And
Yeah,
maybe as you
yeah.
get older, your time is you're seeing a limited time frame ahead of you, so you better get to work.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So you mentioned earlier in the interview when you watch something like Law and Order, it bothers you because the law is so wrong. But let me just give you an example. As a programmer, someone who's done a lot of web development, I remember this moment in The Social Network where they try and just get past like, oh, he wrote this in PHP and this, and it was clear as someone who's run a web server that the guy who wrote this didn't understand how to write a web server. But it worked in the screenplay. Most people don't have that knowledge. So it
right.
wasn't really that big of a deal for the story. Yeah, programmers are like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, but that's a very small select number of people in the audience. How do you approach these legal things? Sometimes just for brevity, sometimes just for dramatic purposes. The law is not the law is the law in real life, but in a story,
Yeah,
sometimes you do need to make some changes just to get the
I,
story moving and stuff. How do you approach that stuff? As a lawyer,
yeah,
that stuff probably bothers you, but how do you
yeah.
go
But
about that?
I don't want it to be legal. It's not a legal textbook you're writing. You're writing a
Yeah.
novel. You're writing drama, but you can still. The law is very interesting, and it is cinematic. I mean, for example, in one of the good ones, uh, because it's a illegal thriller with some comedic element to it, we wanted to have a courtroom scene, and it really didn't with the plot, but yet we wanted to show the main character, Dean Alessi, played by Tom, as a courtroom lawyer because it develops his character. It makes him more heroic. And so we put a courtroom scene in there, and it was done very well, and true to life with direct testimony, the way you ask questions the proper way, and cross-examination. And that's the thing that bothers me when I watch a courtroom scene. I go, they would never get away with that question, or the judge sustains. And I go, why? So that's what I try to
Hmm.
build in authenticity, but yet preserving the drama in especially the crime books. And like for example, even my play Hate Crime, uh, it's about a lawyer representing a white supremacist. I still had the law correct, and the law made it more interesting, actually. And
Hmm.
so you have to do that. And I understand what you're saying about the technical things. No, I'm not going to get bogged down in giving them, you know, textbook jargon and all that kind of stuff that I would read in law school, because that really, you're going to lose the reader in about 2 seconds.
Hmm.
But but you can still make it part of the story, move the story along, and make it interesting. And that's sometimes difficult, but
Hmm.
I've found it quite easy to do, and kind of fun.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. So what's next for you? What are you working on? It sounds like you have a novel. You're working on these rewrites of the Lawyers Gone Bad series, but what's next for you in terms of screenplays and movies?
well, we have local talent, which is
You're
uh,
financing and getting the financing together on that.
getting the financing, but the local talent itself is a comedy. It's I compare it to like Ed Wood, or Waiting for Guffman, a bunch of local dreamers from Buffalo, actors, a screenwriter who writes this goofy TV remake of Baywatch on the shores of Lake Erie using plus size lifeguards because his girlfriend is a little plus size, but she's lost weight. She's working on it. And so it's got the comedic element. A con man sweeps in, takes advantage of them, gets their money to do a demo reel, and it costs like hardly anything to do this demo reel, and then he runs off with the rest of the money. So that's the whole essence of the plot. So
Mm.
it's got some crime element to it, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah.
It's about the main character is a dreamer in his late 30s, actor who hasn't made it. Maybe he should have gone to New York City or Atlanta or Hollywood and tried, but he stayed in Buffalo. And so it's a film about almost making it. And so we've gotten some good support. I think that the script is pretty decent. It did well at your contest back in 2023. It was a whole little bit different um, um, story back then, but so I revised it a little bit to fit it for Buffalo. So that's what we're working on. We have a complete script. I mean, you're always revising a script,
Hmm.
and I'm sure it'll change as we get closer to filming. But so we've got that, and we've raised 25 or $22,500 so far out of a $75,000 budget with some other commitments out there and developing the financing. I have support of some local people up in Buffalo that are well known, and we've got all the locations uh, and other amenities that are going to be that won't cost us anything. So it's got a lot of positives going for it, and it's just getting the local people behind it and with their pocketbooks.
Hmm.
As you know, that's
Yeah,
one of
yeah.
the hardest things to do. And so now I'm watching a lot of YouTube videos on how to develop financing and so
Hmm.
forth that are out there. And those are the types of books I'll read now.
Gotcha,
So,
gotcha. So, is there anything you can recommend to our mostly screenwriting audience that you've been watching? HBO, Netflix, anything out there that you thought was interesting?
well, we last night, I told you before we went on, I was flipping through and Rocky was on. And of course, we had to watch it. And
Mhm. It's an
so
amazing script, man. People go back. Some of those movies like that are really iconic. You rewatch them and they still work after all
Well,
these
and
years.
and that was one of the scripts that I read. I read about Sylvester Stallone writing that script
Hmm.
and actually got the script and looked at it and how, there were some differences in the script and he wrote it in a notebook. I mean, it was like
Hmm.
amazing. This guy is so persistent. And look where it got him. And so he's a inspiration, I think, to any
Hmm.
screenwriter out there, dreamer, to really continue at it because
Hmm.
he's been very successful. And so that one, I mean, The Godfather is another one that
Hmm.
anytime it's on, you can't switch the channel. I'm that type of guy. Things like Sopranos, Breaking Bad,
Hmm.
um, you know, all the good stuff out there. Now we're into Stranger Things.
Sure. Yeah.
Although it's taken how many years for him to come
Yeah.
back, but
Yeah.
it's coming back Thanksgiving.
And
So we're watching
do
we're
you know what
watching the
do you know what the release schedule is going to be like for one of the good ones? It sounds like you guys are getting hooked up with indie rights. When will that be settled and when would they start pushing
they're
it
gonna
out?
yeah, it'll be in January, date to be determined. It'll be
Okay.
released for rent and to purchase.
Okay.
And then it's in a Cannes Film Festival in May.
Okay.
And it's going to be there's a couple film festivals, one in Dunedin, Florida, that it's already entered and been accepted.
Perfect.
And some other ones he entered in. Tom is the executive producer, Tom Polino, and he entered into a variety of contests or
Nice.
film
Nice.
festivals, I should say.
Yeah, yeah. And what's the best way for people to keep up with what you're doing? Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, anything you're comfortable sharing, I will round up and put in the
Yeah,
show notes so people can click over.
yeah. You can go to Amazon and just search my last name, Scarcella, and you'll find all my many books. In terms of I don't know if I don't have a problem giving my email address. People can contact me is V L as in Louis Scarcella at gmail.com to contact me anytime and I'll talk writing with you. I love talking about writing. I do teach it from time to time when asked. So those are the major things on Facebook. Just search
Hmm.
my name. Instagram, same way.
Gotcha.
I'm on Twitter, but I avoid Twitter because it's so toxic. And those are the two major ones that I use,
Yeah,
Instagram
yeah.
and Facebook to try to sell books.
Perfect, perfect. Well, Vincent, I really appreciate you coming on the show with me and talking about all your writing projects. It's very inspirational. I hope people really listen to this. And it's just the key is getting out there and doing it, man. Just writing and writing and
Let's do
writing.
it.
And it
Yeah.
sounds like that's what you're doing.
Yeah. I appreciate the
Yeah.
opportunity once again and for having me and buy my books.
Yep, yep. Sounds good. And yeah, maybe we can just do a pitch for that. Where are your books available? Mostly on Amazon. That's where you sell
Yeah,
most of
well,
your books.
that's one of the drawbacks of the KDP program. If you use KDP, you're stuck with Amazon.
I
And
see.
Amazon does take a big chunk of profit, but
Gotcha.
it's so easy for me to do it, and I'm loath to try to go
Yeah. Gotcha. Gotcha. So,
once you're there. So yeah, just go to Amazon, search me, through the little window there, and
mhm.
my books will come up, and hopefully you'll take a look at them and be interested in buying them. And I've gotten some reviews from newspapers and things like that. They're positive. So,
Perfect. Perfect. Again, Vincent, I really appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you very much. We'll be in touch.
okay,
All right.
thanks.
Take it easy.
Bye.
A quick plug for the SYS Screenwriting Analysis Service. It's a really economical way to get a high quality professional evaluation on your screenplay. When you buy our 3-pack, you get evaluations at just $67 per script for feature films and just $55 for teleplays. All the readers have professional experience reading for studios, production companies, contests, and agencies. You can read a short bio on each reader on our website, and you can pick the reader who you think is the best fit for your script. Turnaround time is usually just a few days, but rarely more than a week. The readers will evaluate your script on 6 key factors: concept, character, structure, marketability, tone, and overall craft, which includes formatting, spelling, and grammar. Every script will get a grade of pass, consider, or recommend, which should help you roughly understand where your script might rank if you were to submit it to a production company or agency. We can provide an analysis on features or television scripts. We also do proofreading without any analysis. We will also look at a treatment or outline and give you the same analysis on it. So if you're looking to vet some of your project ideas, this is a great way to do it. We will also write your logline and synopsis for you. You can add this logline and synopsis writing service to an analysis, or you can simply purchase this service as a standalone product. As a bonus, if your screenplay gets a recommend or a consider from one of our readers, you get to list the screenplay in the SYS Select database, which is a database for producers to find screenplays and a big part of our SYS Select program. Producers are in the database searching for material on a daily basis, so it's another great way to get your material in front of them. As a further bonus, if your script gets a recommend from one of our readers, your screenplay will get included in our monthly Best Of newsletter. Each month, we send out a newsletter that highlights the best screenplays that have come through our script analysis service. This is monthly newsletter that goes out to our list of over 400 producers who are actively looking for material. So again, this is another great way to get your material out there. So if you want a professional evaluation of your screenplay at a very reasonable price, check out www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. Again, that's sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. So I'm still lining up the next show for January, but since it will be in the new year, happy holidays to everyone. Have a safe and happy New Year's. And until then, this is our show. Thank you for listening.